Michael Andretti, while no longer being the CEO of the team, might have received the best news possible when it comes to his entrance in the sport. The CEO of Liberty Media, Greg Maffei, has stepped down, and after Trump's takeover of the White House, chances for Andretti to enter the sport as an 11th team are as great as they've ever been. With internal changes in Liberty Media and with the acquisition of MotoGP, the company now faces a very difficult task, proving to the Department of Justice as to why Andretti isn't good enough for the sport. So could this, in a leadership with Trump's government, lead to a massive change on the horizon? And can we finally see at least 11 teams on the grid? It goes without saying that the F1 world was shocked when Andretti was denied access to Formula 1 as an 11th team, because he passed all of the checks from the FIA in terms of technical knowledge. All he has to do now is convince the FOM and F1 that he has what it takes to bring value to the sport. He's failed in this bid ever since, and that was one of the primary reasons why he stepped down as the CEO of his own company. However, hiring staff from various F1 teams and recruiting Pat Simmons, who was once a high-profile member of the FIA, goes to show that his mission to enter the sport is far from over. For all we know, Andretti has already constructed part of the 2026 chassis, and the goal now would be to enter the sport in the year in which the new regulations are starting. Of course, the elections in 2024 have had a massive impact on the sport's development itself, because we've seen that Trump was present within the McLaren camp in Miami, which goes to show that now with the new government and administration, a lot of focus will be put on creating and funding an American team on the grid. It wasn't a coincidence that Trump sided with McLaren, one of the few teams on the grid who endorse Andretti and his bid to enter the sport. And now that the dots are connected, a massive development in Liberty Media could see Andretti's request being put under a lot of attention from the US administration. A massive hurdle has taken itself out of the way, and that's the president, Greg Maffei, who will be given a new role in the company as it undergoes a full restructure, while his position will be taken by John Malone. Things have gotten to the extent of Jack Ploy from Ziggo Sports stating that the Trump's victory in the USA means that the country will now have a much more serious approach to the sport and have a fully American team that will be powered by American engines, preferably Cadillac as a branch from General Motors. When talking about his stepping down from the CEO role and taking a new one at Liberty Media, Greg Maffei went on to say, "There'll be another chapter at Liberty, but I got to declare victory on the ones that I did. We had some great deals, we've been very lucky, and we had some great management teams drive them. It seemed like a good time to say all of the table is cleaned up there. The stage is set, and my contract was expiring at the end of the year. And I thought I'd go check out another chapter. I'm going to continue to be an advisor. I'm going to continue to be on a bunch of our boards, including Live Nation and Charter. But I've got one more act in me." Although the rumours that Stefano Domenicali stepping down from his role as the president of F1 and being replaced by either Wolff or Horner have been shut down immediately, the other changes are quite visible. Liberty Media no longer have the man who opposed the entrance of Andretti to its absolute extent. This is something that has been discussed by Mario Andretti, a former Formula 1 champion and the father of Michael, and when talking about one of the meetings that happened around the Miami GP, Mario said, "I was asked to go to a breakfast event, and just as I was trying to explain that to Stefano, Greg Maffei, Mr. Maffei, broke in the conversation and he said, 'Mario, I want to tell you that I will do everything in my power to see that Michael never enters Formula 1. I couldn't believe that. That one really floored me. We're talking about business. I didn't know it was something so personal. That was really, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. It was just like a bullet through my heart.'" This might be one of the primary reasons why Andretti has decided to take things to the next level, which is the Department of Justice, as Liberty Media will have a very difficult mission right now. Prove to this department that they have not breached the Sherman Act, which governs monopolistic and anti-competitive business practices. To say that Andretti won't bring changes to the sport is definitely something that nobody can predict, because we're talking about a team from a country that brought the sport to the heights we're witnessing right now. Yes, the street circuits might not be something that we like, but nevertheless, they're bringing the big bucks to the sport. And Andretti himself offered to pay the cash that would dilute the prize money, with a promise that the prize money itself will rise once Andretti enters the sport due to new sponsorships and more money flooding into the sport. I mean, we don't have to be geniuses in order to do the math. The documentary Drive to Survive did its own thing, and this year's Miami GP has attracted a record US television audience for an F1 race with an average of 3.1 million viewers. The sport was never so popular in the States, and if you were to go back in time in 2017 and tell someone that this would have happened 5 years from that point on, you would have been considered a crazy person. But the business is booming in the USA. We have 2 new tracks added from 2022, and great cities like Chicago and New York are now looking to host a race in the foreseeable future. When talking about the interest and how it affects his son's attempt to enter the sport, Mario said, "The interest in the USA is something extraordinary. In all my years in the United States, I never perceived such a strong interest in Formula One, not even in the 1960s, when it was followed by Americans anyway. There were decades when interest was almost absent, and then suddenly, after the boom of the Netflix series dedicated to the category, an unthinkable love for the sport by Americans broke out." And this is why Mario Andretti is particularly happy that a man like Donald Trump has won the election. Let's not forget the primary slogan that he used throughout his campaign, "Make America Great Again." And how can he do that in this particular branch of motorsport racing? Have a team with its own engine that could dominate the sport maybe 5 or 10 years from now. Because the earliest that Cadillac can enter with their own engine is either 2027 or 2028, which would make the mission of Andretti an even greater one now that Renault is no longer part of the engine program of the sport. Even though the French manufacturer refuses to sell the IP to Andretti and give them the rights to produce engines, the fact is that Formula One lost an engine manufacturer in the sport, and they might be desperate in terms of replacing them sooner rather than later, which is where Andretti comes in handy. When talking about the election of Trump, Mario said, "Let me be clear, politics is certainly not a priority for me. However, I have done my duty as a citizen, and I'm certainly not disinterested in the management of public affairs. This is why I'm happy with Donald Trump's return to the White House." These comments were further fueled by Jack Ploy, who said, "It all has to do with the victory of Donald Trump. Andretti are going full on attack now with the help of the Republicans towards Formula One." Of course, nothing of this would have been made possible had it not been for Liberty Media, but the split in the company has now made it possible for Andretti to bid through Trump and through the Department of Justice as to why his bid is being rejected time after time when he's ticking all the boxes. What is further pressure for Liberty Media is that they've purchased the rights to a MotoGP, and the European Council is also looking very close to this matter because the greatest teams in that category right now come from Europe. So if they see that Liberty Media is manipulating their way with the teams and the market, they might as well have a word or two before they enter into this shared business venture. Obviously, we're talking about a massive change in the direction of the sport, because while Formula One is perceived as the most elite competition, which it certainly is, as it's a closed club with Haas being the last team joining back in 2016, we mustn't forget that there is a position for 2 more teams on the grid. The influence of the American market has shifted the sport's narrative and lifted it to heights it couldn't have even imagined in the past. So this is something that Andretti and Trump will definitely think about when it comes to whether or not the sport can enjoy the fruits of the American sponsors and money, but not have their own team, which does sound a bit absurd when you say it out loud. Mario Andretti didn't stop here. He went on to talk about the changes that are currently happening in Andretti. And while you would think that Michael backing down from the CEO role is naturally a bad thing to happen for the greater goal and mission to join the sport from 2026 onwards, it's actually vice versa. Elaborating further on this extent, the 1973 champion said, "This is an issue that involves my son and his company, not me. What I can say is that there will be news and changes, and that my full support goes to my son for all the decisions and choices he's made during this period and will make in the future to manage this situation as best he can." Now, whether or not the change of administration from the 20th of January will lead towards a change of the attitude towards anti-competition laws and a change in the outcome of the investigation, be that as it may, Andretti has all to hope for that the path will be open to him thanks to the business talks that Trump will hold with the new leadership of Liberty Media, which might be a bit more eased up when it comes to bringing an 11th team and an engine manufacturer on the grid. So with all this in mind, do you think that Andretti will enter the sport as an 11th team? And do you think that Cadillac will produce engines in the foreseeable future? Let us know in the comments down below.